Louisville might be back in the big dance, but the seeding is comical.
You are Locked On Louisville, your daily podcast on the Louisville Cardinals. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Card Nation, what's going on, everyone? Welcome into this bracket reaction episode of the Locked On Louisville podcast. I'm your host, Dalton Pence. This is my fifth year covering the University of Louisville, third year hosting this show, and I want to take the time to personally thank you all for making us your first listen of the day. Just a reminder, the Locked On Louisville podcast is free and available on all streaming services, 5 days a week, your team every day. Today's episode of the show is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. All you have to do, visit FanDuel.com to get started. The long and anticipated wait is finally over. The Louisville Cardinals are back in the NCAA tournament for the first time since 2019. And unfortunately, the disrespect continues no matter what year it is. The Cardinals get an 8 seed in the tournament, which is hilariously low. We'll discuss that. We'll give our reaction to the draw that they got. And spoiler alert, it's kind of brutal for Pat Kelsey's team in his first year. And then at the conclusion of the show, we'll give some takeaways from the ACC tournament as a whole, the Duke loss in the championship game, and much more. I know that the NCAA women's basketball bracket is going to be revealed also on Sunday evening. That will be something we talk about on the next episode of the show. Wanted to get on here quickly to react to the men's bracket being revealed. So I don't technically know where Jeff Walls' team is going to be, and we'll break down that reaction on the next episode of the show. But it was to the point where even when Louisville lost to Duke in the ACC Tournament championship game on Saturday night, I was bummed out. I was sad. I was a little annoyed. But I woke up Sunday morning. I woke up this morning and I was just filled with immense joy because it has been a long road back. One that, if you're not a fan of Louisville, you might not really understand. To know how far we've come, you have to know where we've been. And where we've been is rock bottom. Since 2019, Louisville basketball had continually just gotten worse and worse and worse, to the point to where another change had to be made. The Cardinals hired Pat Kelsey, and he had a completely revolutionary first season. Turned this program around 180 first year, got the team ranked again. They finished the last week of the regular season number 13. They were 25-6 going into the conference tournament. They were in the top 25 in the net ranking, and things were looking good. They beat Stanford in the ACC tournament. They beat Clemson, picked up another quad one win. They lost to Duke. Didn't have Rain Smith. Duke didn't have Cooper Flagg or Malik Brown, but you know what? Really proud of this year's team, and the loss against Duke just couldn't take away the joy of seeing Louisville's name pop up on that screen on the bracket reveal. Well, really, that was until the third name got revealed in the field. The Louisville Cardinals got an 8 seed. An 8 seed in the South Regional. They'll be taking on Creighton in the first round in the 8-9 matchup. And the number 1 seed is the number 1 overall seed, the Auburn Tigers, who I don't agree, but there have been people this year talking about, could this be the best college basketball team of all time? That's just how good of an opponent we're talking about, potential opponent. I think, and forgive me, I try to do a really good job on this show separating emotion from logic. But the more I think about this logically, the more emotional I get. I mean, it's completely hilarious that the Cardinals got on the 8 line. I thought when they beat Stanford, they were going to lock themselves into a top 7 seed. And then they beat Clemson. So they're another quad 1 win. It was pretty clear that the conference tournament just didn't matter to the eyes of the committee. And look, if you would have said, you know what, Louisville gets a 6, I would be like, okay, cool. I think that's where I had the Cardinals projected. If you would have given Louisville a 7, I would be like, I mean, I don't agree with it, but oh well. An 8 is a complete slap to the face. I have to be honest. I feel like I owe you all an apology. And I will make the excuse that it's been a while, so I haven't had to think about it. But once I remembered, I realized that I've been kind of misleading you all in the bracketology discussions, because I thought that determining the tournament seeding was based upon the basketball on the court. And it was clear that when I remembered that I was incorrect, that it's not so much about the basketball being played, but who's going to drive the most money in? Which matchups are going to give more TV ratings? Which matchups are going to draw better attendance? Let's underseed Louisville and put them in Rupp Arena, a stone's throw down I-64 East. Okay. I thought it was about the actual basketball on the court and not so much who the tournament committee's athletic directors like and dislike. What's funny to me is that in real time, when you saw Louisville get an 8, the take was, well, the committee clearly didn't see the ACC in the same light as others. And then North Carolina gets thrown onto the board, and it's like, okay, so if you don't see the ACC in that light, why are you putting a team in there that recorded one good win in December, lost double-digit quad 1 games, and, oh, by the way, did not beat any of the ACC teams in the field? Got blown out a couple times. Did not beat them. So are we awarding winning games, or are we awarding just playing the toughest games? And I understand, look, I know that Louisville didn't have the marquee victories, but they beat Clemson twice. They were 4-6 in quad 1 opportunities. One of those wins dropped below the Indiana win. Should have been 5-6. But yet a top 40 non-conference strength of schedule. Leads me into the next point. How can you value the ACC in some light and not value it in the other? It's pretty clear, is that there is no deciding metric. And I know that the tournament committee, they're human beings, but isn't that the whole reason why you developed the net ranking system, to eliminate some of these, these different conference discussions? Isn't that why you brought the net ranking in? Because Louisville was a top 25 team in the net. You know who also was? Clemson. They were like one spot ahead of Louisville. They had a couple more quad 1 wins, but the Cardinals beat Clemson head-to-head. Clemson was a 5 seed. I'm okay with that. I'm okay with putting Clemson as a 5 seed. But you're putting the team right behind them in the net ranking as an 8 seed. So, again, you're telling me that, or you're admitting, again, that there isn't a rhyme or reason to why you decide what you decide. It's you move the goalposts to fit what you want to happen. And that's your rationale. And I find it hilarious. If you don't believe me, who's the head of the tournament committee? Wow, the athletic director at the University of North Carolina. Also a team that controversially got into the field over teams like West Virginia, who had 6 quad 1 wins, San Diego State, Indiana, North Carolina. So you don't prioritize the ACC, but you're going to prioritize the team that finished 5th. Because why? Because they played tough teams? At some point, you have to award winning. I do think it's funny that, you look at or you listen to the rationale afterwards, and the committee said that they used the Torvik rankings this year as part of the decision-making process. Great rankings. Louisville would have been a 5 seed based on the Torvik rankings. So how much did you use them? So you didn't really pay attention to the net. You didn't really pay attention to the Torvik rankings. You didn't really pay attention to the other rankings because Louisville was a top 23 team in KenPom as well. What's the rationale here? Other than that, Louisville continually gets disrespected. 2005, 2014, 2025. At this point, might as well throw the banner back up. If this is how you're going to get treated, might as well. Why not? Also, something that I think is a little funny is what would have happened if Louisville had lost that game to Stanford? We might have been on the bubble without even knowing it because you were an 8 seed, despite being a top 15 team in the AP poll. And look, those Kentucky fans that are going to find their way into the comments because they, revolve their day around listening to Louisville shows, the take is going to be, well, got to play in a better conference, got to do this, got to do that. Again, the only thing I agree with here is you don't have like that signature marquee victory. But why have a net ranking then? Why have any of these other measurables where Louisville, in none of the other main measurables, did they equate to the 29th best team in the country? And also the injuries that the Cardinals dealt with. When they went through their tough stretch against non-conference teams, well, a lot of that, they were trying to figure themselves out. You talk about the narrative surrounding this team. Well, North Carolina was playing better. That's why they got in the tournament. Louisville hasn't lost but twice since the middle of December. They were clicking at the right time. They found what worked. Everything that the tournament committee continually pushes out there, I look at and I'm like, okay, so you truly didn't believe that because look at the rankings. It made no sense. So the answer for me next season is insanely clear. Schedule more quad 1 games? Nope, don't do that. Actually, you might be able to because if you schedule 12 and you lose all 12, you can get in if you're North Carolina. The teams in the ACC have to be better, right? Nope, that's not what I'm thinking, although that's probably something that would help Louisville. No, the answer is you got to find a way to get Josh Hurd on the tournament committee because it's clear, even if they're not, quote-unquote, in the room when these teams are talked about, come on now. If it walks like a duck and quacks like a duck. Anyways, I'm going to pause my I don't even know. I'm sorry. I'm kind of flustered at the moment. I'm going to stop my monologue here. I'm going to give you an instant reaction into the South Regional, the tournament draw that the Cardinals got. And truthfully, I'll be honest, guys, it's pretty brutal for Pat Kelsey's team. Eating healthy doesn't have to always be complicated. With Factor, you get chef-made, dietitian-approved meals that are ready to heat and eat in just 2 minutes so you can fuel your body without the hassle of cooking. Factor means arriving fresh, never frozen, and with 40 options across 8 dietary preferences each week, whether it's Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, or Keto. Convenience meets nutrition with Factor. I love how Factor keeps you on track with healthy, delicious meals without the time-consuming prep. Eat smart with Factor. Get started at factormeals.com/Factor Podcast and use Factor Podcast to get 50% off your first box plus free shipping. That's the code Factor Podcast at factormeals.com/Factor Podcast to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first box. Also, want to take the time before we get into the next segment to tell you about our friends over at Supply House. You can get all the supplies you need from the site made for the skilled trades. That is Supply House. Whether you're into plumbing, HVAC, or electrical work, Supply House is the reliable way to order products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Plus, with a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from 400-plus top brands, you'll find exactly what you need. Need help with an order? Supply House offers expert support and industry-leading service. Their free Trade Master program offers exclusive perks like a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Join the Trade Master program today at supplyhouse.com/TM and start ordering plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies with just a few clicks. Plus, use the promo code SH5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. I think my first reaction when I saw Louisville as an 8 seed in Lexington is that I was kind of just sitting there thinking, wouldn't it be kind of messed up if Louisville got thrown in as the 8 seed and the 8 seed or the Louisville Cardinals? And I'm like, okay, so we're getting disrespectful in broad daylight is what I'm catching on to. And that 8 seed is like, oh, well, Louisville's playing in Lexington. That situation is the equivalent, if there are any Office fans here, the Scott's Tots episode. Michael Scott makes the promise when a group of students in the town, for whatever reason, I'm drawing a blank on the town that Dunder Mifflin is in. Duh. Never mind. It's Scranton, Pennsylvania. But he offers free college tuition to this group of students, and time passes, and he admits that he thought he would have been a millionaire by this point. But the time has come where this group of students had grown up to be seniors in high school, and he gets invited to the school, and the students are all excited, and Michael has no intention of paying, and he just gives them laptop batteries, and even goes a little further by offering one student free books through college, which honestly could probably add up anyways. But this is the equivalent of that. Like, oh, we're going to slap you directly across the face and give you an 8 seed and make your journey to go into the Sweet 16 exponentially tougher, but we'll let you play in Rupp Arena. Auburn beat Kentucky in Rupp Arena. They're a really good team on the road. Like, yes, I'm glad that if you're going to play a team like Auburn or Creighton, you're playing them in Rupp. So I guess a consolation prize. But the draw that the Cardinals got, like I'm looking at each of the regions, like the South, East, West, and Midwest, and you got the toughest number 1 seed. And comparing the 9 seeds, Creighton, Baylor, Oklahoma, and Georgia, oh, I would have 1,000% took any of the other 3 teams over Creighton. I don't think Louisville matches up with Greg McDermott's team very well. Ryan Kalkbrenner is one of the best defenders in college basketball. Louisville struggles with a dominant big man that finishes well around the rim, rebounds well, and can also shoot, and Kalkbrenner can do all 3. So the initial thought is that, yes, you get thrown into that pod with Auburn. Getting thrown into a pod with Auburn is daunting, and having to play that team would be an extreme uphill battle. But I'm also like, hit the brakes here for a second, because Creighton's a pretty solid team that I think matches up well with Louisville. And we're going to have a much more in-depth analysis episode talking about the Blue Jays. But they've beaten St. John's this year. They've beaten UConn a couple times. They beat Marquette. Barely lost to Alabama. They beat Kansas. They barely lost to Texas A&M. Like, this is a pretty solid 9 seed, and it's not going to be an easy contest. The Cardinals are favored by, what, like 3 points or so? I think that was the initial spread, if I'm not mistaken, but Creighton shoots the ball decently well from the 3-point line. They score a lot of points. They don't really force a ton of turnovers, but they move the ball around pretty unselfishly. They rebound pretty decently, and their best player is sort of like a kryptonite for Louisville, because the Cardinals don't really play all that well against just dominant big men. Maxime Reynaud, Cooper Flagg, the list goes on of the players that the Cardinals have played. And then you also look forward to, and you look at Auburn. I mean, a damn good team. I mean, they've been battle tested all year and they came out primarily unscathed outside of the past couple of games where they've skidded a little bit, but they've got a veteran-led team led by Johni Broome, who is arguably a top 2 player in college basketball, really dominant in the post, and that's a tough matchup for the Cardinals. And then you look at the rest of the breakdown. The 2 seed is Michigan State, won the Big Ten regular season championship. Tom Izzo's team is fantastic. The 3 seed is Iowa State. Iowa State has been sort of struggling. They've got Monsilovich back, but I think they're a pretty vulnerable 3 seed. Moving down the line, the 4 seed's Texas A&M, a team that beat Auburn just a couple weeks ago. They've got Wade Taylor, who can score 30 on any given night. That's a tough 4 seed. The 5 seed is the Big Ten tournament champion, Michigan Wolverines, who, again, Dusty May's team is having a great season. The 6 seed is Ole Miss, who demolished Louisville early in the season. Granted, Louisville is at a completely different spot than they were, but tough matchup there. So I don't think it is far-fetched whatsoever. In fact, I would be pretty shocked if anyone thought that this bracket was not the toughest. The only one that I would maybe consider would be the West. Florida's a really good 1 seed. I like St. John's as the 2. Texas Tech is a dangerous 3. Maryland, Memphis, and Missouri being the next seeds in the line. Like that's a tough regional as well. But my money from an objective standpoint is that the South is the toughest bracket. So Louisville's going to have an uphill battle from the first tip in the tournament. But we'll discuss everything you need to know this upcoming week. Before we do that, I do want to have a little bit of an ACC tournament recap. Feels kind of silly knowing that it didn't mean much, but Louisville still handle business in 2 of the 3 games, and we'll discuss when we come back on this bracket reaction episode of the Locked On Louisville podcast. March Madness is here. FanDuel gives you the chance to get in on the action like never before. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 extra bucks to use on everything from buzzer beaters, Cinderella stories, and even who's cutting down the nets. And honestly, you can bet on the teams that are the most underseeded, which Louisville Cardinals. Anyways, FanDuel app is simple to use, and when I win, I get paid instantly with no waiting around. Visit FanDuel.com and get in on the college hoops action all tournament long. Louisville Cardinals fell in the ACC Tournament Championship game on Saturday to Duke. It was their first appearance in the semifinals, the first appearance in the finals, and it was sort of an up and down tournament for the Cardinals. Won't lie to you. You won 2 games, but the way you won them wasn't really all that inspiring. You had to overcome a 15-point deficit to Stanford. You had an 8-point lead in that game late and gave up the lead. And Chucky Hepburn thankfully got the ball in the mid-range wide open and made the shot to send him into the semis. You played pretty good for the most part against Clemson. You had a 15-point lead with less than 3 minutes and 30 seconds to go. You almost gave up that lead, but were able to clutch out the victory after that. That brings it to the Duke game. No Rain Smith still, so you have to take everything with a grain of salt, but Duke was missing ACC Player of the Year and likely top draft pick in the next draft, Cooper Flagg, and Malik Brown was also out. You had a 5-point lead going into halftime, and Duke outscored the Cardinals 40-24 in the second half. Looked like Louisville just sort of lost their legs, got exhausted. Hepburn, Edwards, Hadley playing a ton of minutes over the duration of this season, and it just looked like it caught up to them. Louisville wasn't able to get much going offensively. Terrence Edwards was really the only player doing much. He had a game-high 29 points on 12 of 29 shooting. Chucky Hepburn had the first 7 points for the Cardinals and was, 3 of 3, and he went 5 of 16 for the remainder of the game, had 14 points. No one else scored over 6 points in the game. So It seems like the Cardinals will get Rain Smith back for this week's tournament action, but I think that it wasn't the most perfect string of performances. Like Louisville hasn't been playing like they were in mid to late January, but there's something to be said about coming in clutch against Stanford, against Clemson, and I give the team credit. I'm super proud of them. I'm going to mention this week, no matter what happens in the NCAA tournament, I am super proud of how this team has played this year, how they played in ACC conference play, and how they dealt with adversity early on in the year. And Pat Kelsey and company have done a tremendous job turning this program around in year one. And at this point, getting to the tournament was fantastic. And this is a milestone because we didn't know if it was going to happen, especially when Louisville dropped to 6-5 in mid-December. But they did. And I think that Louisville just has to, and this is going to sound really cliche, and it's going to be a hashtag expert analysis. Louisville's got to play better. They have to get more offensive production from Terrence Edwards and Chucky Hepburn, especially with the road that you were going to have to take starting on Thursday. You're playing a Creighton team that can score a ton of points. They can defend. They can shoot threes. They have a dynamic big man that has played a ton of games in March. Back-to-back Big East Defensive Player of the Year. Ryan Kalkbrenner is a great player. It's going to be a challenge. So I know that there's been a lot of complaining on this show today. And I tried to separate emotion from logic. But like I said, the more I tried to think about this decision logically, the more I got emotional and pissed off because I'm like, there's just no reason why Louisville should be an 8 seed. But it is what it is. Can't, cry about it too much. So that is ultimately going to wrap up this episode of the show. Just a reminder, on the show tomorrow, we're going to react to the women's basketball bracket reveal. We are going to talk a little bit about that Creighton matchup and sort of discuss the updated expectations for the tournament now that Louisville got underseeded. Do the expectations of winning a tournament game still apply? And we'll answer that when we come back on the show tomorrow. Thanks again for making us your first listen of the day. Be sure to subscribe to the show on YouTube, share with your friends, hit that like button on the videos, and also follow us on Twitter at LO_Louisville. Everyone have a great day. We'll see you right back here on the next episode.